Hi, thank you so much for clicking on this awesome video. I'm really sure you're going to find a ton of value in there. And I want to also congratulate you because you're so dedicated that you want to learn the ways how you can get hired in UX UI design, that you actually messaged me on Instagram, you were going to the link, you were giving your email address, and now you are watching this video. So thank you very much again. On the other hand, if you're looking for a quick and easy way of getting hired, maybe this video is one way for you. And I just want to make sure that you get the most value out of this video. So with all respect which I have for you, I would like to ask you to get your phone and try to put it not even on the side to a different room. Because actually studies have shown that even if you have your smartphone on the room, it's already decreasing your cognitive capabilities of focusing on one thing. I would like to ask you to focus on this video, even though it seems a little bit long at the time. I'm going through really important lessons which I learned over the past 5 years. I also included studies and numbers about getting hired and basically the best ways and best practices even today which I'm using and every other professional uses in the industry, which I'm really sure going to come as a new information for you. And if you manage to use these informations well enough, I'm really sure you're going to get much better off on your UX UI design journey in the future. So please put your phone away, use it on silent mode or airplane mode so no one can disturb you. Put this video on a bigger screen and try to focus in for this 1 hour because I'm sure it's going to be worth your time. So let's just jump into the video. So what we're going to go through today is basically how to get hired in UX UI design in 2024. First of all, let me clarify who am I and why am I capable of talking about this kind of thing. After I finished high school, really soon I realized that I'm not a really good fit for universities, and I soon moved to the Netherlands where I've been working as a basically minimum wage waiter. And while I was doing this waiter thing, I tried to save up some money to buy a house back in Hungary at the time. And I soon realized that if I keep saving up money, it's never going to be enough for buying a house. So I realized that instead of saving up that money, I would rather spend it for education. And at the time I was really into web designing basically. And I decided that I'm going to learn that on a higher level. I actually wanted to give up at the time. I was already really exhausted about like living abroad without any friends and without any family. I was really anxious and sort of depressed about this whole situation, but I decided that I'm going to take it as a last chance. Eventually I took a 3-month bootcamp in Amsterdam, a UX UI design bootcamp. I really enjoyed it and I really loved it genuinely. And as soon as I finished the school, I started to apply massively to companies. And to be honest, obviously the 3 months long bootcamp was really valuable in itself to learn design. But on the other hand, what I think was really useful from these 3 months, that we had 1 week dedicated on learning how to get hired. And basically ever since, I'm using these tactics which I learned there and experienced there. And these are the sort of tactics and methods which I'm going to show you today in this slideshow. I just quickly want to show you a few experiences of mine from the recent years where I have been managed to get, what type of people I managed to work together with, which places I managed to travel, because I want you to understand that you see all of these pictures, right? But most of them, first of all, I was still working, like I was on like working hours while I was basically traveling all over in Europe and in any other countries. And in some cases, I was actually traveling because of work, like they actually paid my traveling, my flying tickets, my plane tickets, my accommodation there. And I just want to show you this because all of these could have not been possible without of my cool work, where I managed to make a secure living and also basically have a job which is fulfilling. I managed to work with really nice people and also on cool projects which I might be genuinely interested about. Obviously not all the time I would be interested about the project itself, but just overall the environment which I get to be working are really, I would say, exceptional in terms of like, I would say it's like the higher end of like the possibility where you can work, how you can work basically. And as I mentioned before, I moved to the Netherlands to save up money to buy a house, and basically this goal of mine hasn't changed since. I want to save up as much money as I possibly can, and recently it changed into doing that by doing UX UI design work. And I was all the time always really focused on basically maximizing my income. In some cases I was also working 2 full-time jobs at the same time, which is basically supposed to be 16 hours of work a day. Obviously, if you have your ways and sort of loopholes, which you can use to basically work smarter rather than harder. You can earn a lot of money. And this was the period of time when I was earning around like 7,000 and even more thousand euros monthly for like half a year, which I think was like really a lot of money, especially compared to my age. And basically I managed to do that because I'm not really affected by the market and not really affected about how am I going to get hired or not, because I landed a lot of jobs and projects all over in the past 5 years. It has happened because I understood the importance of the first impression, how to communicate well on the camera or during interviews, how to answer properly interview questions, how to research companies and sort of learn their values, how to answer those typical questions which would come up on an interview, tailored to that company's needs. My biggest tool would be LinkedIn and LinkedIn optimization, which a lot of people, especially in the design industry, for some reason they don't talk about at all. Meanwhile, in terms of getting jobs, I think like 90% of my successes comes from the fact that I'm good on LinkedIn. And consider this, that I'm not even that good on LinkedIn optimization. Like I'm not anything special. I was just watching YouTube tutorials and I try to put in the hours. I have a few connections, I have good profile image. I'm going to talk about this later in this slide, like how to optimize your LinkedIn. But like, don't sleep on LinkedIn, okay? Let's get a fucking job, right? All right, so let's begin by addressing a few concerns about recent UX UI design topics, like why people are anxious about getting hired in UX UI design. First of all, I hear a lot from you guys from Instagram. I get a lot of messages about, is the market oversaturated? Definitely there is a huge amount of new designers coming into the sphere, but on the other hand, companies are hiring the best of the best. You just have to surpass a certain threshold, because in many cases it happened even 4 years ago, even 2 years ago, even half a year ago, when I was talking to the interviewer after I got hired to a company. And then I was asking like how many other people were applying next to me, and also on LinkedIn you can see that actually hundreds of people are applying for the same jobs. All the time when I got hired, there were multiple hundreds. Like literally in my previous company where I got hired, literally there was like 600 other people competing for the same job. And I just want to say, when I got hired, I wasn't really trying. Like, I didn't have to like really try. And I don't want to make you think that I'm really good designer. I'm not, definitely not. But I'm definitely good on like talking, interviewing, and basically showcasing my work during interviews. And these are the factors which are going to differentiate you from the rest of the people who cannot speak clearly, who cannot showcase their work, whose case studies are like really messed up and not concentrated to a certain company. Even though the market is bigger at the moment in the terms of UX UI design, but on the other hand, if you know how to navigate the market right now, you will still have a really good chance of getting hired. UX UI design requires a certain certificate or degree. That is definitely not true. Even if you go to YouTube, check how people are becoming designers. Even on Instagram, I'm sure other than me, you are following a lot of other people in the design space who has not got a design degree or like any special certificate, nor as me. I was learning it by myself for like half a year or maybe a year. Then I was taking this 3-month bootcamp, and I'm learning ever since, because it's like an ever evolving space. What you can do and what you can showcase of your capabilities are much more important than if you have a paper which says that you are a certified UX UI designer. No one cares. I don't even have an English speaking certificate. I don't have a UX design certificate. No one ever asked for those things. Everyone is interested about how you are acting and what you can showcase and how you can work, basically. AI will take over our jobs. No, they won't, at least not in the near future, because not only UX UI design, but most jobs are really sort of multi-stepped, like it's a bigger process, like a holistic process. And AI is really good at helping designers doing research, synthesizing big chunk of data. For example, after you finish with the research, brainstorming ideas for designers, for stakeholder meetings, whatever, helping you create copy for your projects and websites. But other than these tasks, I don't think and I don't see the possibility of it getting us our jobs taken by now. I'm not scared at all by this, especially if you look at the tools which are available and which you guys are afraid of. I'm really sure you won't find anything which actually can surpass or like take over like a real UX UI designer, because our job is, I wouldn't say complicated, but I would say you have to understand the whole design process and basically the whole business, which an AI can understand but cannot deliver on that at the moment. Companies don't hire designers right now. Is definitely true that after the inflation and sort of this recent market crash, we are having a decline in like companies hiring for designers. But I would argue that by just basically going to like 10 different sites, job listing sites, and just looking at the numbers, and I'm sure I can show you guys, I don't know, 200, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 different jobs which you could apply. So yeah, I don't really see it as an obstacle at the moment. Companies want 2 to 5 years of experience in advance. Even though it's true that in job descriptions we often see they require this amount of experiences, but in most cases even companies doesn't understand what and why they even need this experience. They just see that all the other description has it, so they also put it in. But I want to assure you that even when I was a really newbie and a beginner, I managed to land jobs. And again, basically the same is true as on degrees and certificates. It doesn't matter how many years of experience you have, it matters that how do you communicate your self-worth, your knowledge, your UX design skills basically. And as long as you have a good understanding of the UX UI design fundamentals, you can communicate well, you can present your work, you can answer like a normal human being during interviews, you can maybe even crack a few jokes and you can talk like a human, you definitely have a really good shot about getting hired today. And I just want to make it clear, guys, that UX design is not a get-rich-quick scheme at all. Never was, it never will. So if you're looking into making your first, I don't know, 3,000 euros or 4,000, 5,000 euros within a few short months by getting into UX UI design, I want to disappoint you. This is not the field to do that. And to be honest, I don't think there is even a field or any other way of like getting rich fast, because it's not true. There is no way of doing that. People who are making you believe that there are ways of like getting, I don't know, 5 to 10K without any previous knowledge in a month or like a few months. They mostly just want to sell you on an idea, like a dream, and they just want you to make their money by making their course buys from you. So if you want to get rich quick, this is not the field for you, okay? So let's see the 6 basic steps which is required from you to get hired as a designer. First of all, as I mentioned, you have to be a good enough designer. You have to understand the principles, the UX tools, methods, way basically. You have to have a couple of projects under your belt and a little bit of real life experiences, which can even just be redesigning an application or helping your friends with their websites or family members or whoever nearby, a local shop or whatever. And you can even do it without them asking you to do it. So it's not like you actually have to take like a real project. You can take a project, a problem, and you can work on it as it would be a real project, and you can take it as seriously. The second step would be like a smaller inner work of yourself to figure out your strengths and your weaknesses, and figure out what type of companies you want to work for, because actually it's going to affect the way how you should create your portfolio later on. Then we are going to focus a little bit more on your CV and LinkedIn. We're going to talk about how to set up your portfolio and how to create a cool case study, which is actually enjoyable for HR managers to read about. We're also going to see how we can apply for companies. We are going to talk about how we should talk during interviews, and eventually how to present your work and manage your take-home assignments. Unfortunately, because I don't have much time left, we are only going to talk about like until the fourth point about like how to apply to companies, but definitely the other two is going to come and we're also going to receive them on email. So first of all, creating a strategy about how getting companies or about finding companies, why it is important. You can imagine this scenario in a way that when you're looking for relationships, let's say you are this kind of person, you are like a yellow, really happy smiley face. You can look into different type of companies, but not all of them going to be a good fit for you. So that's why it's important to know yourself. Obviously, knowing yourself comes from experiencing work and life basically, but I just want you to basically sit down with a pen and paper. Literally, this is an action step here. If you can't see the star, this means an action step. Literally, just sit down with a pen and paper, and I want you to write out what type of company you are looking for, what type of projects you are passionate about, what are the topics and sort of industries which you want to work in. Do you prefer to work in like bigger or smaller teams based on your previous work experience? Would you like to work in a remote setting or local setting or hybrid? It's all up to you. But I just want you to a little bit think about like what you are looking exactly, because finding a job which is fitting for you is really hard if you don't know what you're looking for, right? It's basically like setting goals in life. If you don't know where you are heading, it's going to be really, really challenging to get there. And the next step is going to be, you could search for 10 to 15 companies who can fit your needs. And this is a really, really huge life hack, which I'm sharing with you right now, that check the designers who are working for your target company and check their portfolios. Like, how does it look like? What type of work did they include? What type of design elements and design style do they have? You can find them mostly on LinkedIn, like these people. And the next step is going to be try to mimic their work. Later on, we're going to talk about how to create a cool portfolio and a case study, but just keep that in mind that basically the type of company which you want to get hired to, which is based on your needs, has like a certain design style which they prefer. And if you can match this style even before applying to the target company, you are going to much more likely to get hired because you are already that kind of person and that kind of designer who they are looking for already, right? How cool is that? So basically this way you are not just going to be one out of the hundreds and thousands of designers, you are going to be one designer who already looks like what they are looking for. And this way you can make your life much easier. This is a smaller list about the places where you can find companies, Glassdoor or the UXL. And again, as I said previously, how to look for companies. And this is an example of like what different companies could accept from you. And this is why it's important to understand how to create your portfolio and case study and sort of what type of design direction should you take. Because for example, a company who is like a young startup, they are really fresh and innovative and fast moving, is not gonna be the different than a huge enterprise company who is much more bureaucratic. They are slower, they are more conservative in their decision making and much slower, and none is better than the other one. But you can see the differences between these three case studies, like how vastly they different, and you can imagine that all of these case studies can be attached to like a certain company. One company is going to be really clean, really, let's say, data-driven. The other company could be really small, really fast-moving, really innovative. And the another company could be really like an enterprise, huge company, where every decision takes a lot of time and probably the UX maturity level is not really high. And for example, if I would have a lot of kids, I would definitely prefer like an enterprise company, because there the job safety is like much higher and sort of the work-life balance usually is much better. While for example, working for a startup company is a lot of stress, a lot of work, probably 10 to 12 or maybe even 14 hours of general work days, but definitely you can learn much more there. So that's why it's important to know like what are you looking for, and understanding what are those companies are looking for, create a portfolio which is catered to that need, and then apply this way. Because this way, if I would have a portfolio catered to startup companies and I would apply for an enterprise old-fashioned company, I'm not that likely to get hired there, right? So that's why it's understand this type of applying. So just as a recap, figure out what type of company are you looking for, find people who are working at that company, find their design work, find their portfolios, and try to imitate that portfolio, okay? And this way you're going to stand out much, much easier. So our next step is going to be the CV. If you look at these CVs, they look good, right? But I have a bad news for you. Even though they might look really, really awesome and really cool, like graphically they are well made and well thought out, the problem is that we have a thing called ATS, which stands for Applicant Tracking System. If you haven't heard about it, this is basically an AI or like a robot, which is going to scan through your CVs, looking for dates and keywords and looking at the general structure. The scanning system, if it doesn't understand what's on your CV, even though it might what the company would look for, if the ATS system doesn't understand it, it's going to disregard you as like a good applicant. And that's why it's understand like what does the ATS is looking for, so we can create a CV which is working well with the ATS system, and this way we can make sure that our CV is going to go through the ATS system and actually like a real person is going to look at our CV. Because these systems are in place, as we discussed, and as you could already see, multiple hundreds and thousands of people are applying for the same jobs. And obviously like only by a handful of people, it would be really, really time consuming to go through all the CVs, right? So that's why they have these kind of systems in place. But if you know how to approach these systems like ATSs, we're going to have a much easier time creating our CV. And this is what I'm going to show you right now. As we discussed, these are not the best examples. First of all, it's full of graphical designs. The headlines might not that clear. Maybe the dates are not in place. They also could be like 2 to 4 pages. That's really not a good thing. And also content-wise, I see a lot of problems, like whenever I talk to you guys on Instagram, that if you put any irrelevant information in your CV, that's really not looking good. You want to look like a professional, right? You don't want to have irrelevant information like about your other work history, which might sound good, but on the other hand, I wouldn't recommend putting it there. If you don't have that much experience, try to leverage your previous like UX design or project experiences, but definitely if something is really, really out of place, I wouldn't recommend putting it there. And also a huge problem which I see really, really often, that basically we designers are getting hired to make money for the company. And maybe it comes as a shock to you, but basically creating something beautiful is going to be secondary for a company. Creating something which makes money and makes the user happier is going to matter for a company. And if you follow this analogy, we would like to put information and descriptions into our CV, which is going to showcase this. We can do that by showcasing different results and impacts, mainly in terms of like numbers. I would highly advise using ChatGPT for helping you out with this. At the time when I started out, we didn't have ChatGPT, but now you have it, so use it wisely. And now I know this CV looks a little bit boring, but on the other hand, I want to say that this is a CV which can work definitely, because it sort of complies with the ATS system. It uses a simple and easy to understand headline. The body text and also the headlines are clear and the ATS system can understand them. I just want to say that whenever you are using different topics on your CV, as I mentioned, don't use more than one page. And basically you can include only these ones. Like you definitely don't need more than your work experience, education, skills, tools, and optionally an about section. To be honest, I never used it. I see some people that use it, but you're going to have more space and time to talk about yourself on your CV and your portfolio as well. Not CV, sorry. LinkedIn and your portfolio. Make sure that your contact information is clear as hell, all right? Because if your contact information is not understandable clearly, even if you get the recruiter, they wouldn't find it or they just cannot get it. This would be a shame not to get you called because your contact information on your CV is not findable. So make sure your contact info is visible. One thing which I also want to make sure that you are exporting your CV in as a PDF format, not as a PNG. or SVG or whatever other image format, make sure it's a fucking PDF, okay? Because this way, the file size is going to be small. You can send it, people can open it on their phone. They can copy also the text from it if they need to. So just, it's a industry best practice, so make sure you are saving it as a PDF file. Also check for grammar and spelling errors. Even in Figma, when you are creating your CV, you're going to have a spell checker feature inside Figma, so use it as well. And also a really common mistake, which I also see, this is important for the ATS system. This is the method, or this is the sort of structure, how it looks for dates and times. And basically it's important because it's going to calculate also your years of experience. And if you don't use this kind of like month per year to like months per year setup for your date, it might not going to register your years of experience. We definitely don't want that, so make sure you're using this structure for your dates in your CV. And here is two really cool resources which you can check out. JobScan and Resume Worthy. If you upload your CV there, you're going to get a score on your CV. If you get a low score or like a really high score, it still doesn't mean you're gonna get hired or not. But this is a good indicator of like, are you on a good path? And it gives you also advices on like how you can improve. So just as a quick recap, as we mentioned times and times again, pay attention for the ATS system. The ATS system looks for keywords and dates. Use relevant UX design related keywords in your CVs. Focus on a simple design which has relevant information in them. Use the right keywords, titles, and dating conventions, as just I mentioned. Use relevant experience. Again, if it's not relevant for designing, or you cannot leverage anything from your previous experiences, I wouldn't include it in my CV because it might makes you look like a generalist and you want to look like a professional designer. So yeah, use the PDF format and use the resume scanner application to improve your CV without any personal help. Our next step is going to be LinkedIn. So let me clarify why LinkedIn is so important and basically like hidden OP. As I mentioned, not so many people talks about it. I love LinkedIn. You can think about LinkedIn as a website which you want to optimize for search engines, SEO, which is search engine optimization. I really hope you know this term. But you can imagine LinkedIn as basically a platform where if you register, recruiters can find you. Like imagine if you're not registered on LinkedIn, how the hell you expect recruiters to find you? Obviously, you can take the approach of like applying to companies. So basically this way you take the active approach. But basically, if you have a good LinkedIn website, you're going to have a passive way of getting recruiters find you. And this is definitely how I find a lot of my jobs, by optimizing my LinkedIn and getting approached by recruiters. And also if you approach people through LinkedIn, you get a much better chance because your LinkedIn is optimized and the recruiters can see that. So as I mentioned, think about your LinkedIn profile as an SEO page website, which you want to optimize as best as possible. And you can optimize your LinkedIn basically filling out the relevant information, your headline, your background image, your about section, your education, your skills, your previous experiences. You can also give a lot of descriptions about what you are doing, and also try to use relevant keywords just like in your CV. Do all of this, be active on the website, and this way LinkedIn is going to rank you higher on this LinkedIn hierarchy or this LinkedIn ladder, because it understands that you are someone who is putting effort into their LinkedIn profile. You can also add different connections, and this also works like, for example, on Instagram, like if it's going to work as a social proof basically, because if you look at an Instagram account, for example, if you see that they have 3,000 followers, immediately in your head you're going to think that this person must know something, or this person must be special, or this person is sort of above me. And the same is true for LinkedIn. If you have like 10,000 followers, or even just 1,000 followers, or friends, or however they are called on LinkedIn, you're going to have like immediately like a social proof. Really basic but must-have tips on like how to get started on LinkedIn. So first of all, use a coolest image here. You have a 21% less chance of getting noticed by recruiters if you don't have like a professional image here. Also, the same advice goes for your background image. Use a professional background. Here in your title, you should describe clearly who you are and what you do. In my case, there were times when I was working mainly with SaaS startup companies, and it was written here that UX UI designer focused on working with SaaS startup companies. So this way, if a recruiter from a startup company going to came across my LinkedIn page, they already going to see that I'm a good fit for that position. If you are working in any other niche or industry, definitely put him there. Add your contact information. This is also vital. Just like in your CV, you want to be as approachable and accessible as possible for anyone looking for hiring designer. And also, as I mentioned about the connections, try to add a few connections at least a day. Go to like 500 or like 1,000. But the important thing here is that you cannot spam people on LinkedIn, because otherwise you're gonna get banned from LinkedIn. We definitely don't want that. So just be cautious with your approaching people on LinkedIn, and only add, let's say, 15 to like 20 people a day on LinkedIn. This is a long-term game, so play it as that. And also going back to the titles, here are a few templates, or like put your title here and specific achievement, title here, or ambitious statement. Hey, I'm a junior UX UI design researcher. I'm passionate about mobile designs from complex data, whatever industry. Or title, focus statement. I'm a senior UX researcher focused on designing for accessibility and sustainability. This is also a really good example. So basically try to follow these ones. Also focus on your about section. This is a really good space to talk about who you are, what you do, why you are passionate about UX UI design, what is the industry which you're looking to get into, what have you done before, and also you can talk about your personal stuff. This is a place to talk about yourself, right? Not your CV. Also a really good point to put your portfolio and like website at the end of your about section. At the end of your about section, try to use a call to action, like what is the action which you want the recruiter or client to take. In that case, let them know, like, hey, let's chat, or hey, hit me up, or I don't know, add me as a connection so I will message you, whatever, but leave a call to action there, because if you don't tell people what to do, they just won't do it. If you at least advise what they should do, they might going to take the chance. If you have any friends or family or previous coworkers who already have LinkedIn, ask them to give you like a nice recommendation or testimonial, because it's also going to elevate your LinkedIn level or your LinkedIn score. Testimonials are a really good way of doing that. And as I mentioned, LinkedIn score, just as in your CV, you already have a site called linkedin.com/sales/SSI, social selling index for your LinkedIn, which is going to tell you like basically how good and how well optimized your LinkedIn score is. Do that as well as a guidance. And now eventually we're going to get to our portfolio. How do we set up our portfolio? First, before we get into the technical stuff, let me give you an example about how you should think about your portfolio, okay? Because this is an exercise which I'm sure you maybe never even thought about. So for a second, let's just think about how a regular recruiter's day is looking like. You have to understand that they have a lot of other responsibilities within their job other than getting people hired. And whenever they are taking this 1 or 2 hours a day of getting people hired, or at least looking into CVs and portfolios, they're going to have like 20 or 30 different tabs open. They're going to click on one portfolio. They're going to look at this for like maximum 2 to 3 minutes maximum. They're going to look at the headlines, the images, sort of the coherence of the portfolio, and if they doesn't notice any red flags, they might going to give you a shot. But if in that 2 to 3 minutes you cannot convince them that you are the right person to get hired, you're just going to be dismissed immediately. And that's why you have to understand that I know that when you're creating your project, your case studies, your portfolio, you understand everything which is written there. You are the one who created it, right? But you have to make sure that whoever the hell in the world looks at your portfolio is going to understand what's in your portfolio. Meaning, even if you show it to your little brother or little sister or friend who is working as a flower seller, or whoever family member, even your parents, anyone should be able to understand what's on your screen, what is the project about, how did you manage to overcome obstacles during the project, and basically what is the design is about. And maybe these are sounding like sort of industry specific, like design stuff, but you have to make sure that anyone who looks at it going to understand that, have a good time of reading through your case studies. And this is exactly the same approach which you have to take here, because recruiters are not professional designers just like we are, but they're going to be the ones who are going to decide if you can move forward to the next stages of interviewing or not. So that's why you have to make sure that anyone, and again, anyone who looks at your portfolio is going to understand what's written back. Let me give you a quick example of how people are looking at our case studies and portfolios. Imagine you're looking for a nice action book, let's say, or like an adventure fantasy book, like Lord of the Rings, for example, or Game of Thrones. You're going to go to the bookstore. You're going to look for the sort of book island where you can find the fantasy adventure books. You go there. You're going to look through all the books, and based on the cover of the book, you're going to decide which book to choose. After you choose the book, you're going to open it and look at the table of content. You're going to look at maybe the images. Maybe you're going to look at the summary of the book itself. And based on those few factors and few ideas, you're going to decide if this book is the one which you want to buy for $20 or not. And you spend barely a few minutes on finding that one book. Maybe you're even going to read the first few pages to figure out if it's an exciting book enough. But this is exactly the same way how you can look at basically your case studies and portfolios. Looking at the cover, the title, the summary, the headlines. And based on that, you can figure out if it's a book which you want to buy or not. And we want to emulate the same feeling with our case studies. We want a recruiter or a client or anyone look at our case studies, and we want them, just by looking at the visuals, just by looking at the headlines, reading through the bolded, highlighted sections, we want them to understand the story, to understand what is our case studies about. And this is what I was talking about. But how do we do that? It sounds good and simple, but how do we sort of incorporate it into our portfolio? Let's talk about this. First of all, a little bit of technical background on how to set up your portfolio. I highly recommend you not to use Behance or Dribble or any PDF as your portfolio. I want you to choose any website builder. There are free ones, there are paid ones. In our case, if you're a beginner, I would highly recommend using Framer because this has the lowest learning curve. On the other hand, you can also use it for free until you are finished with your portfolio. You can use pre-made portfolio pieces, which made by other really cool designers. You can just take it, make it your own. You can make your portfolio within a few weeks if you already have projects and case studies written out. And then when you start applying, you can start paying for a normal domain. So this way it won't have this weird framer.whatever domain. And you can start applying. And as soon as you get hired to a company, you can stop paying for it. But you can also take Webflow if you have any proficiency in that. For example, my site is built in WordPress because I was, and still to this day, I build websites in WordPress, so I have understanding of that. There was also a time when I was hosting my site in my portfolio in Squarespace because it's also a really good tool for that. So no matter what you are choosing, but choose a website builder and create a normal website for yourself. Because if you have your Behance or PDF as a case study or portfolio or maybe a Figma link, I'm not saying it's impossible to get hired with those, but definitely much harder because you won't be taken that much seriously. And again, a huge pain point which usually comes up for designers like you are, that's starting out creating the portfolio and everybody really overcomplicates it. And that's why I was creating this really simple and easy wireframe of a homepage, basically. You should have one hero section, 3 case studies, and again, this is important, 3 pieces of the case studies, and the contact information, and that's it. You can maybe add a little bit of extras here and there, but I definitely, especially if you're just finished your your UX bootcamp or whatever, I definitely want you to urge to create your homepage and your case studies as fast as possible and start applying, because until you are delaying this step, every day you are losing chances of getting hired and you're wasting time basically. And I know that it's scary and seems challenging and doubting and a lot. But that's why I want you to focus on like just the small basics as a beginning. Use a premium template. You don't have to create anything new, just use a template. Put your titles and headlines and images there and just use a really simple layout. And that's it. You don't have to overcomplicate it, you don't have to overthink it. And to be fair, if you wanna go back to the example, if like we want everyone to understand our portfolio and case studies, the less information you have, the better. The more visuals you have, the better. Visuals can talk much more than your huge paragraph of talking about what type of research methods you were using for whatever project. Rather use visuals for that as well, but we are going to come back to this one. And just about talking about the visuals, for example, these three images, basically thumbnail, are from the same project. A good idea would be to test out on Dribble or Behance which thumbnail does the best or which image does the best, and use them in your portfolio as your basically teaser for your case studies. I'm talking about this section, when you're on your homepage or on your portfolio and you have this sort of like teaser, like about section of your case studies. And just again talking about teasing and like sort of good copywriting, here are a few examples of like how you could create your titles and about sections to talk more about your projects before people would click on the actual case study. Because if you just say, I made the dashboard redesign, or here is an easy rental application, or like I made a bike sharing app, do you just hear how these things doesn't say anything? Like literally anything at all, like nothing basically. But rather if you say, I will revamping a SaaS tool for a marketeer to increase monthly user acquisition by 10%. So basically we already say what you were doing, for what industry you were doing it, what user base you were doing it, what you were actually doing is like what was the goal of the project, increasing monthly user acquisition, and you also stating like how much you successful you were on this project. This is already like 5 information instead of like dashboard redesign. Like what the fuck is this say? Nothing. But the more information you put in your titles, the better. And you can use these on the right hand side. You can see these sort of templates for your titles. Use these, okay? Try to be as informative in your case study as possible. So first of all, how do we structure our case studies? My really good advice would be that even when you're already working on your project, I would highly advise that every week, at the end of the week, or maybe every bigger milestone of the project, sit down and write a quick summary about what you were doing, how you were doing, and this way you not have to document it backwards when you already don't even remember what you were doing 3 months ago, but rather document it every week or maybe every second week. That's a really good advice. But if you forget to do that, or just didn't even do that at all, sit down with a pen and paper and write out every important chapter and steps which you were doing during this project, like how you were coming about, how you did the research, what did you use for the research, what were the outcomes, how did you do the brainstorming sessions, why did you choose eventually that idea or that solution over the other solutions, what made you think about that, how did you come about your design systems, how did you test your designs, etc. So just think about these major points, just put them on your sticky notes or like ThinkJam or like Miro, or maybe you can also use like physical sticky notes if you wanted to, and then try to create a sort of like a story, like a one another story, like a structure. And here is also like a simple way of how to think about stories. You're going to need like a context, like why did you even start what you were doing? You're going to need a middle, like what happened there, what was going on during this project, and basically what were the outcome or the key takeaways. And here problem, step, insight, exploration, validation, results, impact, and takeaways. You can follow this step-by-step sort of like way of structuring it. It's not like anything made in stones. but this could be a good guideline of like how to go about these kind of things. And also I want you to think about what does good stories have in general, right? Usually at the first part of the movie, we're going to get to know our heroes, our side characters, our villains. We're going to have a whole picture about like what is the situation about. This is the context. Then the hero is going to be faced with a huge problem, with a huge challenge, which he somehow has to overcome. Then we're going to get to a climax, which is usually can be a war or like a huge challenge when the hero almost seems like he won't make it, but out of the sudden we're going to have like a light or like a huge motivation spike or inspiration for the hero, and he realizes that actually he was all along this strong, but he just didn't believe in himself. Now he believes in himself, and then eventually he can defeat the villain. And now it maybe sounds challenging, like how am I applying it to my case study, which was like just a redesign project, right? But this is how you should approach it as well. Think about what was the context, what were the biggest challenge, how did you ideate, like how did you overcome those challenges, and what were the factors which sort of threatened the success of your project. Eventually, how did you manage to solve those problems, and what were the key takeaways and basically learnings of those projects. And you can also see it like how it goes in this way of like structuring stories. And also for your headlines again, for example, here you can read like problem, user research, and prototype. If you use these as a headline, it sounds kind of boring, but rather if you write the conversation reads were really low, or I'm talking about headlines here, imagine headlines in your case study. Let's say the users turned out to be really confused by the navigation, or instead of prototyping, you can say there were only 2 steps, choose and pay. So basically, instead of just like writing user persona, problem statement, whatever, and you're giving like a boring guest report, try to kind of like switch up your story and switch up the headlines into like something more like actionable and readable, and something which is fun to look at. And just a huge best practice for the portfolios: use a lot of images as possible, because images mean everything. Images tell more stories than 100 words, right? Or I don't know how it goes, but you get my point, right? Even when you're talking about like research, you can use really awesome, nice images. So try to be creative, get inspired by other designers, and try to copy them as much as possible. So again, a good rule of thumb about any designing stuff or any creative stuff: you don't have to invent the wheel, right? Everything has been thought out. That's why I was saying use a framework template, use a Premiere portfolio. You don't really have to overthink everything. Just try to imitate and sort of copy what other cool designers had done before you. Try to copy that, and after, when you do it for enough years, you're going to find your own voice, you're going to find your own style. But for a long time, at the beginning especially, you are not expected to figure out shit by yourself. And don't get me wrong, if you're a creative, really innovative person, do that. Feel free. I'm not stopping you in that. I'm just saying that if you want to be efficient and fast, you shouldn't spend that much time thinking about those, but rather thinking about your content and how do you present that content. And this would be the next step: interviewing, basically how to interview, how to present your work, and how to figure out your take-home assignments. Unfortunately, in this video, I'm only talking for like about an hour here, so I won't have time to discuss that with you, but I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. These are the kind of things and topics which we are going to cover in my school group. So if you're interested about that, and if you want to actually get hired as a UX UI designer, I highly encourage you to join my school group. We are hosting weekly Q&A calls and also live portfolio critique sessions, where I can pinpoint, for example, in your portfolio, like how could you be better. Actually, we are providing an accountability community, because most people are not failing in getting hired because they wouldn't have the right skills, but rather because they are just not being consistent with their actions. And this is why community can really be beneficial for anyone basically, because every week we are joining in, we are sharing our wins, we are sharing our process, and this way you're going to be reminded of like what you have to do every week. If you're working every week towards one goal with a specific plan, I can guarantee you're going to get hired in a realistic timeline. So yeah, this is my offer basically. Join my school group, enjoy the time. If you don't like it, you will get your money back. Within 30 days you can ask your money back. This is perfectly fine. But I'm really sure if you join, you're going to enjoy it. So you can find the link down below underneath this video. Feel free to join, and I really hope I can see you soon. Bye.